The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2, final part of the Hunger Games series, not counting the upcoming prequel film. This one was released in 2015 to a pretty lukewarm reception. Apparently the film made the least money out of all of them and wasn't too well liked by the fans, which I have to say I found a bit strange, as I thought it was a good conclusion to the series, certainly a better film than Mockingjay Part 1, much better paced and capping off most of the storylines in a relatively satisfying way. The story starts where the previous movie ended. Peeta has been rescued, but he's been brainwashed into trying to kill Katniss. Meanwhile, District 13 is ready for an all-out war against the capital, and they begin their operations with all of their weaponry and the people gathered in the resistance, and that concludes with the siege of Capital City. And even though they intend to keep Katniss behind the lines as a propaganda mouthpiece, she insists on being on the front lines and trying to kill President Snow herself. So, like I said before, much better paced than the previous movie. Finally, there's some more action and tension and the feeling of movement instead of just sitting around having conversations in a bunker. I like that the theme of Mockingjay being shamelessly used as a pawn by both sides of the barricade is not only still here, but becomes sort of the main topic of the movie. There's a certain cynicism about symbols and rebellions and regime changes that was present in the background of all the previous movies, which now really comes front and center. I like Josh Hutcherson, who I found pretty one-note earlier on in the series, but now he gives probably the best performance in the film. Donald Sutherland remains very charismatic as President Snow. I even grew to care about the side characters more than I would think I would, as evidenced by my uneasiness and sort of emotional reactions to some of the deaths. The two things I criticize is, one, Jennifer Lawrence may be good individually, but has absolutely no chemistry with either of her two leads, two love interests. And while it wasn't a big problem before, I feel that with her personal journey coming to an end, we sort of have to believe her feelings for both of these guys, and I just couldn't get on board with that. And two, I didn't like the extended epilogue ending. Firstly, because it just goes on forever. There are like 4 different spots where you could reasonably end the film, and just keeps going. And secondly, because the ultimate epilogue, the stuff at the very, very, very end, felt too easy and hopeful and positive to me. It almost didn't fit the permeating hopelessness of the entire series and of the actual climax and ending of the film, which carried this horrible realization about the nature of the rebellion and the nature of power as a corrupting force. Coincidentally enough, just the day before I saw this film, I watched the final episode, the conclusion of Attack on Titan, which dealt with sort of similar themes of cycles of oppression, violence, and war. And I felt that AOT managed to have a good, hopeful ending, followed by a bleak, cynical epilogue, which felt truer to life and much more realistic, whereas Hunger Games essentially does the opposite and feels a bit cheaper for it. But even with that said, I have to say I enjoyed all of these films. I really expected them to be much more teenage and naive going into them, but they've proven to actually touch on a lot of adult themes and were able to deconstruct the teenage hero tropes rather effectively. So I'm essentially just as happy with the conclusion as I was with the series as a whole.